In today's episode of Soul Business Alchemy, we have a conversation which is as much of an energy transmission as it is an interview. We've got my former client, Marye O'Brien, who's a founder of Maiaveda, which is a thriving small business in provincial Victoria in Australia that's defying all odds. Her business has continued to grow for over 15 years, and she's literally the embodiment of soul business. Welcome to the space and enjoy the frequency of this high vibrational conversation. You are listening to Soul Business Alchemy, the podcast for conscious entrepreneurs, quantum creators, and new wave leaders, hosted by me, Riya. This is where energy meets strategy and business becomes effortless, magnetic, and wildly profitable. Welcome to Soul Business Alchemy, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation. The reason I invited you is because you actually walk the walk of soul-led business. And what's even more fascinating is how long you've been walking this walk and, how big this journey has been since you started. So, Marye, tell me, what inspired your business, your Maiaveda business? Because from what I remember, it was born through pain, right?
It was certainly initiated through the loss of a child. So that's really 20 years ago. I was in the corporate world, probably looking for self-worth in all the wrong places as a high achiever. Probably a default setting from, early childhood trauma. So my world has always been, I was the seeker. If we talk about archetypes, I was in that seeker role, just trying to understand myself. I felt, incredibly sensitive. I felt the world could be quite harsh. And so I threw myself into work and being a high achiever. And so at that time, I was married. I had my first child, who was 3, and fell pregnant with our second. And at full term, he was stillborn. And that was in 2005. So our boy, we named him Aiden. And look, 20 years later, I can say that experience, you can't process that amount of suffering in your head. So I feel that really led for my heart to just crack open. The world couldn't hold my grief, so the corporate world spat me out as a unlawful dismissal and through. But again, you always look in hindsight. The world, starts creating a pathway that might be closer to your true dharma. So maybe through this pain, it really was the alchemy for me to kind of get thrown into that furnace and burn away anything that really didn't align with my truth. So, having had a physical, mental, emotional breakdown through that experience, I did land on a yoga mat. And, the 3 of us were huddled, my husband, my 3-year-old, me as a grieving mother, and we kind of had to navigate life where everything we thought was important was kind of being taken away from us, the income, the job, the company car. But in that moment, I felt in that almost stillness of that. I don't know, I always think about it as that eye of the storm, it's actually quite still and silent. And I think I connected to something kind of much bigger, and this is we talk about that complete surrendering, and that cathartic sort of experience of, knowing that you're going through almost a death. But the yoga path, I felt like that was a compass for me when the days were very dark. And landing on a yoga mat, then becoming a yoga teacher, physically I was reconnecting, less dissociated back into my body, taking a deeper breath. Then my mind needed stimulation because, I just lost my job but I signed up to become a yoga teacher. And then the module on Ayurveda really spoke to me as if I was being called. It's almost like the universal mother was like calling her child home. And connecting with Mother Nature was the first medicine for me. And I threw myself in Ayurveda. I remember walking through these Ayurvedic doctor's door at the time, and my first words were, "I think I'm just broken." And he smiled and said, "Dear one, you're just not balanced, and I'll help you." And that just felt hopeful. I mean, I think that really where the light just started to glimmer. And then, yeah, that whole world of Ayurveda, just purifying myself, aligning myself with my unique constitution, living consciously. It was incredibly transformational. And, 6 months into that journey, I felt I had connected to joy again. And my promise was at the time that I was going to pay this forward. So as the doctor at the time said, "Oh, you're good now. Just come for maintenance. You've got yourself on track with living consciously, living in alignment, changing, it's all about lifestyle." And at the time now I know I was raising my vibration. So and then I said, "Well, I'm now I need you to teach me." So and it was a beautiful moment, quite a those quintessential moments in life where he's crying, I'm crying, and it felt like the teacher and the student um had met. So that was one of my first mentors. And like I said, that was 16 years ago. And then, I started doing the work from home as I was training. And then I there was a beautiful space just up from where I live in an old heritage building. Um, and I showed it to my husband and I said, "What do you think?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Let me build it for you." Even if it was just a refuge for me to feel less wobbly and to practice. And then until I was ready, I opened the doors to the community. And that was, 15 years ago. We birthed Maiaveda.
The role has evolved because just as you were this initiate and this student, now you are a mentor and a teacher. And not just in the sense of doing it for the community, but also for your employees. How many girls are you employing at this moment? Because I know you were.
We have,
Yeah.
yeah, they've come through I don't really call her a business. I call her, even the word Maiaveda, how I got the name. Maya, the root language means midwife, and Veda is the science of life. So, my grandmother used to be a village midwife, and I feel I pay homage to her in that the role of a midwife is to hold space between, these life transitions, certainly the birthing. And we take care of men, women, children, everyone is welcome. But we've embodied creating a sacred space where people feel held. They're not rushed. We're fully present. And when I have therapists that want to join this family, I say no more than I say yes because I'm not looking for their proficiency in technique. I can employ someone just by feeling their their energy, that what their heart is saying. The rest I can teach. So I mainly have like single mums and single women, or students navigating life. They come from all walks of life, but it's almost like they've been guided here because they're on their own healing journey. And I feel like perhaps in some other lifetime, I felt like healers would come to me. I have visions sometimes like we're in the desert and there's big shards of crystals coming out of the earth, and that we would be I would just, I don't know, do my thing, and they would come and they'd fill their cup and go back and serve their community. So I just kind of feel I've held a sacred space before, and that knowing, because humanity faces me every day in that chair, and they reflect back their pain, their journey. The tears are sacred because they finally feel safe. As soon as they arrive, we close the door and we just hold them with reverence, and all of a sudden they can feel and take a deeper breath and be seen.
Your business is not a business, it's a temple. And I remember when we first worked together, like years ago, I can't remember how long it was, like over probably 3-4 years ago. I remember at that time I was doing something in your energy field. I can't remember the exact details, but I saw you as a high priestess. And you know how this term high priestess gets thrown around now? Everybody has it in their Instagram bio and stuff like that. High priestess of Lemuria, this and that. But you truly are like a high priestess, and in a temple, which is your business, with all the therapists being like the acolytes or whatever you would call them, like the initiates.
I believe that too. And you helped me like frame that. But I guess why you have been such an inspiration, because, you know, 10 years ago, I think through my devotion, people ask me, how did you, start speaking light language, and how this world of energy just became a quantum leap for you. I really feel it was through my devotion, like my devotion to serve. And on some level, like I didn't understand. Like I said, we're talking before anyone was really speaking about 3D, 4D, consciousness, conscious businesses. You know, Even when I first started here, I wanted chemical free. I wanted to work with products that had the same ethos as us, and I had to search, hard. A lot of my products were coming from Nepal and Tibet, because we didn't have a green conscious business back then. But that's what I sought out, and wanted to make sure that everything here was as close to nature as possible. We do our own laundry, chemical free, anything that touches the body is, as organic as possible. So that was always, so this is the whole, whether Ayurveda invited me to purify myself, but I was also purifying the business and the community. And, the space the business is on, it's almost like I'm like in the town that I'm in. It feels like I'm lighting up this little patch of earth just energetically. And I didn't realize that until, people would walk up the stairs, come through the door, and have an otherworldly experience, just feeling the energy that we've nurtured. And I witness it every day. Some people have a very emotional response just by being in the space. I can't explain it, but I just know we've created some kind of portal where their hearts can feel at home, or, I don't know, a recognition of an energy that is speaking to them on a level that the intellect can't quite, explain. So I know that this purification, this raising the vibration is in everything we do. The language we use, the touch, the intention. That's why I say it's not just a massage. It's not just a facial. It's not just we're holders of space. And the girls purify themselves, so we keep elevating the consciousness. And now I'm ready, like, almost, I'm 58 now. I'm entering my elder years. I'm an empty nester. I feel like it's time to teach. This is where I'm ready to be seen, be heard. Even this gracious invitation is, I know, the universe saying, Mary, you're ready. You're ready to be seen. You're ready to be heard. You're ready to continue inspiring just through my storytelling. I'm nothing special, but I just know when we come back to the essence of who we are, and if pain has to be that trajectory, it, you crack your heart open and you start to see the world through a different lens, more of compassion and forgiveness and gratitude. These are higher states of vibration. Then you see the essence. Everyone's essence is love. Like that's the highest. That's who we are, and we only ever really see it in tragedy, don't we? The how humanity really comes back home to themselves is when they see others in pain. So really, that's the embodiment of my business. There are days where I'm tired, and I will drive here and say a prayer to my business, and I say, "Well, can you take over today? Just show me what I need to do. I'm just gonna step back and just you show me." And that's how I talk to my consciousness, my business.
That's the essence of soul business, and I just want to unpack it a little bit for our audience because there's so many wisdom nuggets in this. So first of all, business is a sacred space, and the fact that your intention, your, like you say, dedication, the smallest details to doing everything right really pays off, because those people who come through the doors, who feel the frequency, they come back because they come back home. So it's not like you don't have to have some special trick promotions.
And my lowest budget. It's like I don't I don't need to market. It's word of mouth. It's people are lying on the bed already thinking about someone they love, they want to pay it forward to. That's how it works.
That's exactly how it works. So this is the essence of like a higher dimensional business, because you don't have or you have a very small marketing budget, but your marketing is your frequency. That's just literally, it doesn't get better than that. So people just recommend you, or people just come because they can't find this frequency anywhere else. You create, and you said something that I want to pick up on. You said, I'm nothing special. You everything special. I think that everything.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to make it feel like this is accessible to everybody. I know I've had a number of initiations, and I know, like even now, 20 years ago, I can say, sure, I had a very human response to my stillbirth, but my son birthed me. Challenges, they shape me, but they don't define me. It's like I can hold a space with authenticity. So this is where I think that's the shift, because some people can stay stuck or bitter or, become that seeker and they just keep seeking outside of themselves for their purpose. And I look at people and say, your purpose is to be authentically you. It doesn't matter what you do. It's about what you're becoming. Have an intimate relationship with life. Let it push you, pull you, heat you up. But, that's that cracking open, that cathartic, alchemy. I love quoting Rumi because, he talks about the chickpea and the cook in one of his poems. And I use it a lot in my teachings. That being a chickpea in the pot and you're heated up and the cook is lovingly stirring and you're crying out to get out of this heat, get me out of here. And the cook is lovingly saying, but look at what you're becoming. Look at the flavors that you're absorbing. Look how exquisite you're going to be on someone's tongue. Stay in the pot.
It's not easy in the pot, but look at what
So
you,
that's
yeah. What
look at what you're becoming.
and what
And then one next minute you're the cook and you'll be doing that for someone else. Understanding, to live consciously is to, go through these, I can't explain it. You try and package it, how are people going to live in conscious. I think it's almost like suffering, and that's what the Buddhist tradition says. Suffering becomes your key to freedom. And I don't wish suffering for anybody, but I think look at us now globally. You know, there needs to be some kind of equalizer because we're so far away from ourselves. You know, so we're maybe this suffering that we're feeling, economically, globally, climate, financial, even the disconnect that happened via COVID, that's the epidemic we're dealing with now, the disconnection from ourselves. Our souls, aren't able to take a deeper breath because we're so stuck in this fear, the lower frequencies. So I think our invitation as light workers, we're here on earth. This is my belief, to help people raise their vibration. And not everyone's here to evolve. But the ones that do, I say, come to me, like when you're on your knees, because then I know they're ready to change, to transform, and to inspire others. So, yeah, just, you know, I, you know, I s- and love is the currency we use.
absolutely, and how this, like when I'm listening to you, I can see like how everything you do is literally consciousness taking form, and basically, look, your business could, there is like hundreds of businesses that do the same, but it's how you do it which is totally different, because there's massage therapies, the spas, etc., but how you approach it, from the ingredients you select to how you train your staff, which you don't even think about them as staff, but as a family, to the space itself. That is where everything is special, not nothing is special. Everything is special. And that makes the difference, because it's like business becomes the vehicle for consciousness. And I suppose what's really special is that it can be any kind of business. It doesn't have to be even like, something to do with consciousness or spirituality, even though yours obviously follows like the ancient Indian traditions and rituals and all of that. But I think what is primary is the consciousness level, and the fact that you, in every single detail, this is like a living consciousness portal and living consciousness being that serves the community.
And you co-create then, because sometimes, I still have very human experiences. I don't want to, make this sound like I had therapists that left here and set up similar businesses in the same building. But I know my husband, I had that hurt for like 5 minutes, but my husband said, Mary, people will always want to emulate you because you're leading the way.
Like they say that, like the imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
That's exactly, and I've had a very human response because I'm always very blindsided by people who want to take advantage of my nature, but I that's also a lesson for me as well, to learn about discernment and to let go. Otherwise, that will just, fester and take me out of alignment. So I'm constantly being challenged to stay true to my truth, and to let go, and to create boundaries, and to stay in my lane, and don't get caught up in this hustle and seeking and what others are doing. I just know myself, and that's the beginning. That's what Ayurveda helped me understand. I know myself now, and I trust myself, and I back myself, you know? And so and then I moved from that seeking kind of, state of being to knowing, and I think that's where when I had my first kinda otherworldly experience where, I felt in from a yogic point of view, I felt that energy surge through my spine, whether it was a Sushumna or Kundalini experience, but I felt that was something I couldn't explain with the limited knowledge that I had. It was something otherworldly. And then once that was activated, a few months later, I wake up one morning and I'm feeling this quivering around my mouth, and I start my practice, my meditation, and I say Om, and all of a sudden I'm Ashtaramotakire, I'm speaking the light language, and I thought the Holy Spirit touched me, and I felt, I didn't have any references, but I moved from seeking to knowing in that.
Embracing it in a way. Yeah.
Well, then you find the teachers like you that help you understand and feel less isolated. I thought I was this crazy singing therapist that could do these mudras, and voice was just of the angels that came from somewhere, and I hid it for a while because I didn't understand it. But I first used language at my father's funeral. I just felt held, and my brothers did the readings. We were in this beautiful little Gothic church, so acoustically it was just magnificent, and I got up on the altar and I sang, like, in light language, and I closed my eyes and I felt like Grace was holding me, and it was quite ethereal, and the voice just resonated, and 200 people were sobbing, and then I knew that if this was a gift, then I knew it wasn't gonna hurt anyone, and then, I'd never heard of light language before, and now I know through your beautiful connection that it comes from the Syrian galactic system, which is the Christ consciousness, that I'm the embodiment of compassion. So I know whether, if that's why I kind of got left behind here as a star seed, that this was my mission, that I don't know, but it just gives me comfort that I kind of understand, a purpose or a soul mission almost on a multidimensional level, but I'm just now following the breadcrumbs. Does that make sense? I kind of just
Absolutely. It's just everything for you is unfolding like in this kind of like divine way. It's almost like, divinely guided, basically. But I want to go back to these human challenges a little bit because we can talk about all these like highs and, the experiences where we touch the metaphysical and we've got all these beautiful things, but you're still running a very kind of, physical, down to earth business. And I want to talk about especially about one aspect because you are very much experienced in this aspect. And I remember that's what we worked on when we worked together, which was the burnout. And I remember when we also and burnout was coming also from the fact that there was challenges which were external. I remember right after COVID, and somehow you've not just overcome it, you have actually risen above it because then you reached out and you said that you hit like a record month of a revenue after you've kind of come through it. But I remember you were the first client that I had to teach how to disconnect from the business, whereas normally I teach people how to connect to the soul of the business. So tell us a little bit about it. How do you navigate that? Because obviously that is connected to just the fact that your business is your passion. You've got like your heart is full for this temple you've created, for everything you do. How do you actually disconnect when you've got so much passion where literally Maiaveda is your life, it's like It's everything.
It is. It's actually like my third child, really. But it was a painful but, enlightening experience where we are still physical beings. What I learned through that experience is that when you're vibrating high and raising, you have to protect your nervous system. You have to, and also, I also recognize, we're a small, we really are small and in a country town in Victoria, but people are coming from all over Australia to find us. So that was what was happening when I went, oh my God, quantum leap, you know, how can I keep serving? I needed more people. I needed to, protect my energy. I needed to see my husband occasionally. Like I needed to, everything was, you know, and I had to relook at the model of how I was serving, and then it became, I needed to create more depth than width. So then needed to recruit more, create an online presence, create different so it's like you keep pivoting because you need to protect your boundaries. You need to, saying no became an act of self-care. It wasn't, I was focusing on revenue. I just trusted that that would come, but I needed to put myself, it's almost like I restructured the business. So I became, the next level of service. So I made sure the foundational entry was managed by my high priestesses, and I trained them, and I encouraged clients to wean off me and to be served by this level. Then, if you were ready to walk with me, then I created that online option where we could then journey together. So I don't do the one-off little massages, and that's just an entry level which my team can manage exquisitely. Now people journey with me. So it's almost like I valued my time and energy at that point with your help. So now I can be, again, offer service, um, co-create with, fellow seekers, but help them transition from seeking to knowing, so then they can then set up their business or their community so they can do, like, it's an on, so they can teach what I am sharing today, like to come back.
It took some trust and faith, right? And like with that restructuring, and I remember it very, very, very clearly because, of course, you were very sought after. Everybody wanted for you personally to serve them, and you had to make this decision. Okay, if I just keep being hands-on, quite literally hands-on, then there is no space for growth. And there's always also a bit of maybe of a fear. Will people walk away? Like, there's no need if someone is replacing me. But how did it unfold in the end? The business not only, I think, it didn't decline, quite the opposite, right? It flourished since.
And I'm being asked to be on panels within business networks now to explain my model. Like, it's tough here. We have a housing crisis. It's regional Victoria. Businesses, aren't, surviving. And yet we are humble. We're not loud. I actually now I know my lane, but now I create these wellness retreats where I invite other small businesses to collaborate with me. So the whole village can take care of you now. So I can help their businesses thrive, but I'm the concierge. So it's one phone call, one email, and I will organize accommodation, food, other holistic experiences. But, the essence is, we're the entry point, but I need to support my community as well. So then I connect with other conscious businesses who've got the same kind of, heartfelt intention for their own guests and customers. So collaboration is another way we can, that's like the chakra system, isn't it? Once you move into these higher chakras, the crown chakra is less about me, but more about we, isn't it? So I feel like, your business is hovering up and down the chakra system in your own evolution.
If this episode activated something in you and you're ready to build real momentum, Soul Business School is where this work goes way deeper and becomes your reality. It's my business expansion membership for soul-led entrepreneurs who want to scale with strategy and energetics without burning out or forcing what no longer fits. Inside, you'll get access to monthly live momentum coaching calls, high-level business trainings, real-time energetic recalibrations, as well as a private community of multidimensional entrepreneurs who simply get it. This is not a course, it's not a copy-paste formula. It's your space to grow in alignment, in community, and in momentum, month after month. You find the link in the show notes, or you can visit riyalovegard.com to step into the field. It's just incredible to hear, like you say, quantum leap or a journey of a trajectory of growth, but non-conventional growth. Actually, as soon as you let go of this hustle paradigm where you have to do everything hands-on, because it wasn't to do with control in your case at all. It was more to do with demand, with people just wanting it. And then you're like, well, I will be more of a mentor, or I'll be like the priestess ahead of the temple, and then I'll be lifting my employees up so they can do what I do. And then whoosh, this whole thing opens up opportunities, business revenue hits record high, all of these things happen. But it's like almost like a journey of faith. And I think for anybody listening here who is going through this journey, and you were already like over a decade into a business, it was just a big restructuring. But no matter how little or how long you've had on your business journey, it's always a bit scary to just try something completely new and completely different. You don't know how it's gonna be, but it's like this kind of deep heart conviction again that has pulled you through and then beyond. So what I want to ask is one more thing, because I want to wrap this conversation up with a big takeaway of you as a mentor, not just as a mentor for people's kind of consciousness and development, but as someone who is an experienced entrepreneur who walked the walk, boots on the ground for over 15 years. What would you say to people who are just starting this journey, or I even think you're starting, perhaps still like, is it for me, is it not for me, or just started, maybe things are slow? What was your advice as an experienced entrepreneur and a conscious entrepreneur?
I think what the pivot for me was that there's joy in serving, but you need to make sure you're coming from the right place. When I first started, I was, wobbly, still recovering from a nervous breakdown and grief, and I wanted to be liked. I felt like an imposter going through this, syndrome of what am I to call myself, a healer or a practitioner. You're going to go through all that doubt, all that fear, judgment. But when you come back to your truth, like I know I was, my giving was actually coming from a place of lack, that I wasn't good enough, that, there was a lie that I believed as a child where my light was dimmed, that I was unworthy or too much, and I had to actively reject that lie in all my decisions and come back to knowing that I'm a good person and that my giving has to come from a place of abundance. You've got to work. If you've got this void, think, there's no void. You've just got to come back home to your wholeness, your truth, and believe that You're here to learn. I don't even know where this is taking me. In a way, I'm actually stepping back now and creating more freedom because now my firstborn lives in London. I want to visit him. That's now I want to create freedom so I can travel and, you know, everything. You're just constantly evolving. But you need to know yourself. You need to trust yourself. And whatever it takes for you to come back to you and your truth and you're going to be always, the shiny things are always going to, distract you. But you just got to come back to, I now give because it gives me so much joy, but I want to make sure that my giving isn't to carry anyone because you have to trust that the person has this inside them. You just have to help them remember. Don't come from this ego. Stay humble. Just live with authenticity is my takeaway. Come from an authentic place. If you start to sound like, you're that desperate, no, you're here to learn about yourself. And if business becomes that vehicle, your creative mechanism to learn about who you are, then just see it that way. Don't focus on bottom dollar or outcome, just focus on what you're becoming.
And in the process, everything will be given to you anyway as your.
You gotta trust. Get back on your knees sometimes. Know that you know nothing and that you just open yourself and empty, empty, empty. And then, I listen to my clients. My clients run the show, really. I listen to what they need and I pivot. When COVID dried up a lot of the income stream, I created agency and connection with government funded programs so I could serve the most vulnerable members of community through, disability care, respite, refuge, women looking for, through in domestic violence. We created sacred spaces for our most vulnerable, and government was prepared to fund that. And I created those connections.
So
It's about being creative. Always look, don't create your own lane and trust.
it's just literally that sums up the essence of soul-led business. And that's why we were here. And I hope that this conversation wasn't just a conversation, because I think it was for me, and I hope for whoever is listening or watching this, you felt that it's an energy transmission. Like in the kind of Kundalini tradition, there's a Shakti path where people just project the Kundalini onto other people for them to experience. Well, I feel like you kind of have this frequency of wisdom in business and a soul business, and I hope that everybody who listens to it, in a way, feels this and learns this, not so much just through the words and stories that we've exchanged, but through the essence and through the frequency, and that something lands here to inspire your own journey, and that you take from it whatever you need to take from it. But from my part, thank you so much, Marye, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your experience, and for most of all for sharing your frequency, because that frequency is encoded in this recording, and I hope it will inspire many, many souls. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Blessings to you, my beautiful friend.